In Luke 14, Jesus is having dinner at the house of a prominent Pharisee. And while he is there, he gives a series of teachings about banquets. It is from this chapter that we, the Banquet Network, get our name. And soon you will see why. Jesus is quite the disruptive guest at this meal. The occasion starts off by Jesus healing a man on the Sabbath, which the Pharisees don't know how to handle. Jesus then rebukes all of the attendees for choosing seats of honor, which expose their deep pride and lack of humility. And then Jesus turns to the host and says these words: "When you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brother or your relatives or rich neighbors, but invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind." Jesus then goes on to tell a parable about a man who was giving a great banquet, and all of his invited guests made excuses for attending. They cited property, possessions, and family obligations as reasons they couldn't come. After receiving these rejections, what the host in the parable does next is to go to the highways and hedges and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. At this meal, Jesus teaches us some important principles about being God's people. Part of being like God and following God is to intentionally invite those with disabilities, those on the margins of society, to our gatherings. When we do church, we are to make sure that our invites are going out, not just to the popular, prestigious, and powerful, but also, and even as a priority, to those on the margins and to those with disabilities. Today's church, both in the U.S. and worldwide, is not obeying this mandate. Estimates are that 95% of people with disabilities never hear the gospel in their lifetime. Most people and families impacted by disability don't attend church, and many of those who do have been asked to leave. When they do participate in church, people with disabilities are rarely serving and rarely leading. They are not seen as essential parts of Christ's body. Inaccessible congregations are the norm, not so much physically, but relationally and culturally. The Banquet Network exists to equip churches to include people with disabilities. We want to work together to address this gap between our reality and what Jesus called us to in Luke 14. We walk with churches, step by step, as they take little steps towards inviting and including people with disabilities in their church. We know that every church has unique strengths and unique challenges. That's why we've developed a tool we call the IMP, or Individualized Ministry Program. This tool is based on the IEP that is used in the school system to accommodate and include students with disabilities. Our team of coaches work directly with churches to create their own individualized ministry program, in which they discern how they are going to reach, serve, and include people with disabilities in their context. We want to make obeying Jesus as easy as possible, so we walk with churches every step of the way, talking through their questions, their budgets, and their fears. And importantly, all of our work with churches is free, because we believe no church is too small to invite people with disabilities to their banquets. We want to work with you too. If you can get a few people in your church to set aside a few hours for a few months, we can help you make and implement a plan for disability inclusion. Disability inclusion doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be difficult. We'll come to you, we'll walk with you, and stay with you along the way. Let's work together to invite more of our world to Jesus.